Chapter 5 is managing file systems, and there's not a lot to show on this because I don't want to mess up my computer. But you'll understand the file system features, the system management tasks. You'll understand file folder attributes used in the FAT and the NTFS systems. There are file allocation tables. The earliest system is used for the hard disk was MS and DOS. It was an operating system, and everything you had to type in whatever it is you wanted to do in the run command. In DOS, in the old DOS systems. There's three different versions of the FAT systems. It's FAT12, FAT16, and FAT32. The number after each FAT label indicates the number of primary bits used to address blocks of data or clusters in the file allocation table. The larger the number, the more distinct addresses are available for identifying blocks of the file data, generally resulting in the ability to store more data. The new technology file system, which stands for NTFS, it was first introduced with Windows NT, and it was supported by It's supported by Windows 7. It's a secure and efficient file system that is commonly used in business and computing environments. NTFS partitions are theoretically limited to 256 terabytes, but the practical limit is lower. Usually, the basic using of the old IBM standard for the partitions are restricted to 2 terabytes. NFT stores files and folders in a way that looks very similar to the FAT file system. The difference is in how the data is secured. Reliability managed and allowed to grow, NTFS supports partition sizes for up to 32 gigabytes limited, imposed on the FAT system. You can log files and check port consistencies. You can also, we're back to the automatic bad cluster management where you're going to run a check disk. Your names are file names are stored in a Unicode and an 8.3 DOS format. Alternate data streams. A file stored on the NTFS system can have multiple streams of data associated with it. Each stream is a sequence of data bytes. Every file has one unnamed stream that is used to store the byte data typically associated with the file. You can have shrinkable or extendable partitions and volumes. If a partition or volume is formatted with the NTFS, the file system can adapt when the partition or volume is resized. Partitions and volume resizing were covered in Chapter 4. Volume mount points. A partition or a volume has an infinite amount of space available. The partition or volume can be extended or spanned, but in some cases this is not an option. Managing mount points. If I had a separate volume 2 in here, what you would do was you would click on that and you would format it. You'd have to ensure that the option of the file system is sent to the NTFS. You'd select the checkbox to perform a quick format. Click OK to continue. Click OK to acknowledge the warning. Wait for the status of the volume 2 to become healthy. Then you'd want to right-click the volume 2 and change the drive letter and paths in the pop-up window. You'd note that there is no current drive designed for that data. You can make any drive that you want that's not being used. You can make it an X drive or a Z drive or a P drive or anything else that you want. In the assign driver letter or path window, click mount in the following empty NTFS folder. You can browse to find an empty folder that you want. You can replace the new folder text in the new folder. There's a lot of things that you can do with your different disk drives. You can archive them. Uh, the attribute flag, it's going to be set to the operating system, and it'll come up and ask you, do you want to archive these folders now? You can also have hidden attributes flags, and you can show those again. Uh, the compress attribute is only supported on volumes and partitions formatted with the NTFS file system. A folder or file is set to compress the state cannot be encrypted. You can move your compressed files. You can copy your compressed files, and of course you can encrypt them. Um, you can manage all your folders. You can go to previous Windows versions. You can make a new folders. You can make it so they're read-only. Files, folders, and permissions. Has its own access control list, which is ACL. ACL is a collection of access control entities that define the specific security that can perform a given action. Uh, you can Members of the administration group have full control. You can also limit the control of different users. You can let them just have read only, or you can let them change certain programs but not all of them. You can allow different users to do different things. You can allow them to read and execute. This permission used for folders allows read access to files and folders that are below this point. This equivalent of enabling read and list folders contents. The permission used for files allows read access to the file's information, and it is an executable file. The user is allowed to run it, but they're not allowed to make changes. You also have modify permissions where they can modify your Word products or whatever it is you want to use. You can just give them write permissions, or you can give them just read permissions. There's a lot of different permissions that you could give, which is good if you're especially in a work environment and you don't want people to change your work. You can put a password on them. Permission, you can inherit permissions and just copy them. If you wanted somebody to be like Susie, then you could just copy Susie's, and all of her permissions, her inherent permissions would flow over to the next person.